My brother's knee was pressing the breath out of my chest when he lifted our father's bronze military statue above my face. The oak floorboards under my head were slick and warm with blood. Every inhale scraped against my fractured ribs. My left eye had swollen almost completely shut, but I could still make out Damien's hands shaking around the metal base. Not from fear, from strain. He meant to bring it down on me. Behind him, my sister-in-law stood in the doorway in a cream-colored coat, wearing the flat, patient expression of someone waiting for a delayed train. "Finish it," Serafina said. "Put her down before she ruins everything." Damien raised the statue higher. He believed I was nothing more than his grieving little sister, a 33-year-old Army captain who scheduled flights, tracked supply manifests, and spent too much energy defending an old house that should have been sold off years ago. That was the story he'd built for himself. It was the story he'd told our relatives, his attorney, the police, anyone who'd listen. What he didn't know was that my phone had been broadcasting for the last 17 minutes. He didn't know who was on the other end. He didn't know the real reason our father had left me the house. Above all, he had no idea who I actually was. 3 months earlier, the house on Washington Avenue still carried the scent of funeral flowers. The bouquets sat wilting in glass vases throughout the living room, their sweetness curdling into something sour. Neighbors dropped off casseroles, sympathy cards, and gentle voices. They hugged me at the door and glanced past my shoulder, as if half expecting my father to walk out of his workshop with sawdust still clinging to his hair. He never did. Sergeant First Class Arthur Morris had lived through 2 wars, a helicopter crash, and 34 years of marriage. Cancer finished him in 11 months. I had faced enemy fire without flinching. I had directed evacuations while mortar rounds landed close enough to shake dust loose from the ceiling. I had watched aircraft vanish into mountain storms carrying people I cared about. None of it prepared me for the emptiness of my father's chair. Damien flew in from Chicago the day before the funeral. Serafina came with him, dressed head to toe in black, juggling 2 phones and grumbling that the town didn't have a decent hotel. My brother's hug lasted maybe 3 seconds. "You look exhausted," he said. "I am. You really should take better care of yourself." Our father laid dead upstairs, and Damien was already critiquing my posture. That was so typical of him. He had a gift for turning any room into an inspection, appointing himself commander without anyone asking. Growing up, he'd always been the loudest one, the fastest talker, the kid who could shatter a window and somehow convince our parents the glass had broken from the outside in. I learned early that arguing with Damien only gave him more to work with, so instead I watched, I remembered, and I waited. Those instincts would later save lives. Back then, they mostly just got me through dinner. Our family lawyer, Walter Finch, showed up 3 days after the burial. He set his worn leather briefcase down on the dining table my father had built from white oak and asked us all to take a seat. Rain tapped against the windows. My mother had passed years before, so it was just the 3 of us, Walter, Damien, and me, with Serafina hovering near the kitchen counter, pretending she wasn't listening. Walter opened the will. Dad's truck went to his oldest friend, Elias Vance. His tools went to a veterans training program in town. His savings were split evenly between Damien and me. The house was left to me. Damien didn't react right away. That silence unsettled me more than shouting would have. Walter kept reading. I had 5 years to pay Damien half the property's appraised value. Until that debt was settled, he had no ownership stake, no right to live there, and no authority to sell or mortgage it. The terms were fair, generous even. Damien leaned back and drummed one finger on the table. 5 years? That's what your father instructed, Walter said. My father was drugged out of his mind on morphine. Walter's face hardened. Arthur had signed the final papers 7 months before his diagnosis turned terminal. 2 doctors had confirmed he was of sound mind at the time. Serafina stepped forward. This whole arrangement reeks of sentiment, she said. Linda played the dutiful daughter while Damien was out building a career. I looked at her. Serafina had visited my father twice in 6 years. Both times, all she'd done was complain about the furniture. Damien slid the document toward Walter. Dad always meant for the house to be shared. No, I said. It was the first thing I'd said in several minutes. Damien turned toward me slowly. No, you've been back 3 days and you're already acting like you own the place. I do own it. The room went quiet. Walter shut the folder before Damien could grab for it. That should have ended things right there. Instead, it was only the opening shot. That night, I went out to Dad's workshop. The air smelled like cedar shavings, machine oil, and the faint tobacco scent that had clung to his jackets for as long as I could remember. His tools hung above the bench, arranged by size. Every blade was sharp. Every clamp sat exactly where it belonged. My father believed disorder was a symptom before it became a disease. A loose hinge became a broken door, an ignored debt became a shattered family, a tolerated lie became a permanent way of living. On his desk sat an old ledger bound in cracked brown leather. The early pages held ordinary expenses, property taxes, groceries, parts for the furnace. Partway through, a different pattern emerged. Damien, rent. Damien, car payment. Damien, business investment. Damien, legal emergency. The figures grew larger every year, 10,000, 18, 32. Over a decade, my father had wired my brother more than $200,000. Several entries had a small triangle marked beside them. Dad used symbols when he didn't want to spell something out directly. Growing up, a circle meant paid, a square meant pending. I'd never once seen the triangle. Tucked inside the back cover was a photograph of Damien shaking hands with a man outside a glass-fronted office building. The man wore a dark suit and a silver tie clip shaped like a falcon. I knew his face, not personally, but from an intelligence briefing. Victor Soren, an international investment broker suspected of brokering technology transfers to sanctioned buyers. My brother's money troubles had just turned into something far bigger. I slid the photo into my pocket and heard a floorboard creak behind me. Damien stood in the doorway. His face stayed composed, but his eyes locked onto the ledger instantly. "What are you doing in here?" "It's my house." That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. He stepped inside and shut the door. His cologne overpowered the clean scent of sawdust. "Dad only left you the house because you worked him." "No. You were here while he was weak. I was deployed for most of his illness. You called him. I was his daughter." He moved closer. "You always had to be the honorable one, didn't you? West Point, Afghanistan, the uniform. Dad never stopped bragging that his little girl was an officer." I watched the muscles along his jaw. Anger, shame, something underneath both. Fear. The fear was the part that interested me. "You told people I loaded trucks for a living," I said. "You work in logistics." "Sometimes," he laughed. "Don't start with the classified routine. You're a captain, Linda. You fill out paperwork and tell pilots where to park." He reached for the ledger. I clamped my hand over it. His smile disappeared. "Give me the book." "No." His eyes flicked to my pocket. He'd caught the corner of the photograph. For one full second, neither of us moved. A clean, tactical pause. He'd just given away what he actually cared about. Not the house, not the will, but that photograph. Serafina called his name from upstairs. Damien stepped back. "You should take the buyout," he said. "Grab the cash and leave town." "You don't have the cash." Something flickered across his face. Barely, but enough. He left without another word. I locked the workshop behind him. At 2:17 the next morning, I photographed every page of that ledger and sent the images through a secure channel I hadn't used on domestic soil in 14 months. A reply came 7 minutes later. Black Lantern Protocol acknowledged. Maintain cover. Do not confront subjects. A second message followed. Soren network active. Possible internal access attempt. My father hadn't just been bankrolling Damien. He'd been surveilling him. During that first week after the funeral, Damien tried charm. He called at midnight, claiming he was under short-term financial strain. How short-term? 6 months. How much? That's not really relevant. It is if you're after my house. He let out a slow breath. "We could refinance. You put the deed up as collateral, I stabilize the business. Everybody wins." No. And you didn't even let me finish before I already knew you were lying. I thought it through before you finished talking, I said. The call ended abruptly. Serafina tried the gentler route next. She called during my lunch break to tell me the house was far too big for a single woman. You could move somewhere smaller, more modern, she said. Start dating. Build an actual life. I have a life. You have deployments. Correct. Doesn't that get exhausting? Pretending that's enough? I looked through the cafe window at two soldiers crossing the street. One walked with a prosthetic leg. The other slowed his own pace without making it obvious. No, I said. What's exhausting is people assuming they understand it. She hung up. After that, the harassment turned more calculated. Relatives started reaching out. Aunt Carol claimed Damien said Dad had been confused when he signed the will. A cousin asked whether my combat service had left me paranoid. Someone posted online that I'd kept Damien from visiting our father. Every accusation carried a trace of Serafina's language. Unstable, isolated, traumatized, dangerous. It was a coordinated smear campaign built for a narrow audience. Discredit the target, isolate her from allies, build a paper trail of instability, provoke a mistake. They expected grief to make me sloppy. Instead, I started a black notebook. Every call got a timestamp. Every message got screenshotted. Every drive-by past the house was recorded by the camera Elias had mounted above the garage. Elias Vance had been my father's closest friend for 50 years. A retired police chief with a bad knee, a steady hand, and zero tolerance for polished lies. When I pulled up the real estate listing, he stared at the screen for a long moment. Damien had put my house up for sale. The photos included the inside of my bedroom. Elias glanced toward the back door. He's been inside. Yes. Anything missing? Not that I can tell. That's not the same thing as nothing. He was right. We went through the house room by room. Nothing in the main living spaces had been touched. In the workshop, though, the third drawer of Dad's steel cabinet sat cracked half an inch open. Underneath old drill bits and sandpaper, there was an empty rectangular gap. Dust marked the outline of something that had been taken. A drive, maybe a document case, maybe both. Elias rested his palms on the cabinet. Your father called me 2 weeks before he went into the hospital, he said. What did he say? Asked if I still had my old evidence safe. Do you? Yes. What did he give you? Elias looked at me, torn between a promise to a dead man and a duty to a living one. Told me not to open it unless you asked about the triangle. That mark in the ledger. My pulse slowed. Open it. The safe sat in Elias's basement, tucked beneath a shelf of fishing gear. Inside was a sealed military document pouch, a flash drive, and a handwritten letter addressed to me. I read the letter first. Linda. If you're reading this, Damien has made the house his target. He believes I hid evidence here. He's right, but he never understood what that evidence actually proves. The money I gave him stopped being kindness a long time ago. It became surveillance. Every transfer let me trace another account. I was trying to save my son. I may have only made him worse. The drive is yours. Don't shield him from the truth the way I did. Dad, I read it a second time. No tears yet. The flash drive held bank statements, emails, photographs, and shipping invoices tying Damien's investment firm to Victor Sorin. The transactions were disguised as cryptocurrency losses. They weren't losses. They were payments. Someone had been buying access to restricted guidance systems through a web of shell companies. Mercer Avionics appeared on 3 separate invoices. Our father had worked there as a senior security consultant after leaving the Army. The house wasn't just worth money. It held the chain of evidence that could end Damien's life as he knew it. One question remained. Why hadn't Dad simply gone straight to federal authorities? The answer came through in an audio recording dated 6 months earlier. My father's voice played through Elias's laptop speakers, weaker than I remembered, but still deliberate. If this reaches Linda, it means I failed to bring Damien back myself. Contact Colonel Voss. Say the phrase, "Lantern remains lit. She'll know what to do." Elias looked at me. Who's Colonel Voss? My commanding officer. His eyebrows shot up. I thought you worked in aviation logistics. I do. That sounded exactly like your father. I grabbed my phone. Colonel Voss picked up on the first ring. Report. Lantern remains lit. A pause. Location? Ohio. Compromised? Not yet. Subject? My brother. A longer pause this time. Maintain civilian posture, she ordered. We move once he goes for the drive. I looked at the sealed pouch on the table. He already did. Voss's tone went cold. Negative. He took the decoy. That was the second reversal. My father had anticipated that someone would search the workshop. The missing drive had been a plant. Damien believed he'd secured the evidence. What he'd actually walked off with was a military tracking beacon, broadcasting every time he plugged it into a device. His entire network was about to start exposing itself. I went home and waited. For 11 days, Damien went completely quiet. No calls, no messages, no drive-bys in the middle of the night. Silence from an emotional man usually means retreat. Silence from a cornered one means he's regrouping. On day 12, he invited me to Rosalie's diner. Just the two of us, he said. No lawyers, no accusations. I knew it was a setup. I went anyway. Rosalie smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and every Saturday morning of our childhood. Dad used to take us there after Little League. Damien always ordered the biggest milkshake on the menu and stole half my fries. He was sitting in our old booth. Serafina sat beside him. Two relatives occupied the table next to theirs. A local reporter sat at the counter, pretending to scroll through his phone. This wasn't a conversation. It was stage theater. Serafina stood and hugged me before I could step back. "We're so worried about you," she announced, loud enough for the room. I sat down across from them. Damien folded his hands. "Linda, you need help." "For what, exactly?" "Your behavior since Dad died." "What behavior?" "The cameras, the weapons, the accusations." The reporter's phone tilted slightly in our direction. Serafina rested a hand on Damien's arm. "Combat trauma can surface years later," she said. "Paranoia, aggression, and obsession with threats." I glanced at the couple in the next booth. Aunt Carol wouldn't meet my eyes. "You entered my house without permission," I said. Damien gave a practiced, sorrowful smile for the audience. "It's our family home." "No, it's mine." "You see?" Serafina murmured. That possessive thinking. They wanted me loud. They needed a scene. Instead, I dropped my voice lower. "Where's the drive?" Damien's expression froze. Serafina recovered first. "We have no idea what you're talking about. Ask Victor Soren about that." The blood drained out of Damien's face. The reporter looked up. I'd just cracked open a new thread in a room they thought they controlled. Damien leaned in. "Drop this. Now." "That's not happening. You have no idea what you've stepped into." I nearly smiled. He still believed that. "You're right," I said. "I know exactly what you've stepped into." His hand tightened around his coffee cup. I stood up. Serafina raised her voice. "Running off again? Is that what the army taught you?" I turned to her. "The army taught me not to interrupt an enemy while she's giving away her position." For the first time, she had nothing to say. I walked out. The reporter followed me into the lot. "Captain Morris, is your brother tied to a federal investigation?" No comment. "Are you dealing with PTSD?" I stopped by my truck. "My medical records are private." "Your family says you're armed and unstable." "My family is building an alibi." His expression shifted. That line was online within the hour. By that evening, Damien had filed an emergency petition to seize control of the property, claiming I was mentally unfit and a danger to myself. That was his mistake. A civil claim demanded sworn statements, and sworn statements created a paper trail. His attorney submitted photos of firearms in my home, surveillance equipment, the locked workshop, and a screenshot of the decoy drive's file directory. They'd just admitted in writing that they'd had possession of it. Colonel Voss called that night. "We have enough to move." "Not yet." "Explain." "Damien still thinks the drive has value. Soren will come for it." "We can take Soren without him." "Not the buyer." A pause. "You think someone above Soren is involved." "My father did." "What do you need?" 48 hours. "You have 12. That was all she'd give me. It was enough. I went back to the workshop and placed the real flash drive inside Dad's steel cabinet. Beside it, I left the house deed, the ledger, and a copy of the federal case file. Not tucked away, but positioned in plain sight through the window. The next morning, I texted Damien. "I know why Dad kept the house." No answer. An hour later, I sent him a photo of the open cabinet. The operation started at 9:40 Saturday morning. Damien's black BMW pulled into the driveway first, Serafina riding beside him. A gray SUV parked 2 streets over. Victor Soren waiting inside. Satellite coverage picked up a second vehicle near the highway with unidentified occupants. Colonel Voss's team was monitoring everything from an abandoned municipal building 3 blocks east. Elias positioned himself behind the house. My phone stayed open on a secure line. I wore jeans, a dark sweater, and my father's old field jacket. No uniform, no visible weapon, civilian posture. Damien rang the bell. I cracked the door 6 inches. "You're not welcome here." He pressed his palm flat against the wood. "We're ending this today." "No!" He shoved. The door slammed into my shoulder and knocked me backward. Serafina followed him in and locked it behind her. Damien held a stack of papers. "Sign the house over." "No." "You don't understand how much damage you've caused." "I understand the number." "What number?" 200 million. He went still. That was the estimated value of the stolen defense technology. Serafina's calm cracked. "Where did you hear that?" I looked at her. She'd just confirmed she already knew. Damien tossed the papers aside. "Give